Hi friends, how you doing? Anything? I got something. Now, you know how I always say it's my third try, this is my fourth try. Yeah, this video is probably the hardest one I've had to make. I came here today to discuss the origins of King Charles III with notes on King Charles I and King Charles II, because wow, did they have stories. They did, but I find myself, I keep screwing up because something happened this week in my house. And if it's okay, I would like to tell you about it. If you want to hear, because it's not good. It was not good. It's still not good. And I'm screwing up trying to tell a story and I want to get that right. I don't want to give you misinformation. Now, again, I'm no one. I'm just an idiot in New Jersey talking to my phone. Okay, so nothing, please never, if I say something, please look it up. If you check it, double check it. If it doesn't sound right, anything like that, please. I'm only a human. So I took some notes and stuff and I'm ready, to give you the video, but Monday happened here. Monday in America was a holiday. It was Labor Day. And whatever, right? So it's like 7 a.m.-ish. I'm sitting in my room having my coffee. That's where I have my coffee. And my daughter gets up out of her room to use the bathroom and, she's gonna go back to bed. It was a little early for her. So one of our cats, Lucy, it's actually my son's emotional support cat, was laying on the floor. And Lucy has this thing where you take your foot and she loves to be pet like right on the chin neck with your toes. It's just the cutest thing. So she's like, my daughter starts petting her, with her toes. And she goes, Mom, she's letting me pet her because Lucy really doesn't care for my daughter. She's my son's cat. She'll, mess with me, but that's about it. So she realizes maybe she shouldn't be able to do that. And she bends down and she touches Lucy and she says her name. And then she says it again. And then she yells to her brother who was sleeping. Lucy took medication. Lucy had a problem with loud noises, especially outside ones, and ones that she couldn't see. Any like clang or bang, or she would get like bad anxiety. So she was on a low dose something to calm her down as needed with noise. So my daughter asked my son, did you give Lucy her medication? And he goes, well, no, why? And then my daughter goes, Mom. And when you're a parent and you know how your kids talk, right? And my son is 22, my daughter's 24. And I heard Mom, and it sounded like she was 3, my daughter. And I ran out and I fell on my knees. She was already on the floor, my daughter, with Lucy. And Lucy wasn't as warm as she should have been. And she wasn't breathing very well. Matter of fact, I don't think she was breathing at all. So I panicked. Always panic, right? Always, but when you have kids, you can't. So I'm thinking, how do I fix this? And I lay Lucy down and I clear out, I make sure there's nothing in her throat or her mouth. And I just give her little chest compressions, just little 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. And she's back. She has a very rapid heartbeat and shallow breathing, but she's with us. And I told my daughter to get her brother, and I said, I think you might want to say goodbye. And he says, let's bring her to the vet. And I just knew we weren't gonna make it. So she was cold. And we always had a joke. Lucy wasn't warm. She was nuclear, like hot, like she was. Anyway, there was a blanket. I was near a blanket, so I grabbed it and I wrapped her up in it. Then I started rubbing her little paws and her ears, just to get. I didn't know what to do. And then my son brings her blanket out from his bed, her actual blanket. So I have her wrapped in 2 blankets, and I just know she's not gonna make it. So I say to my daughter, I said, I'm going to bring her into my room. Shut my door. I keep a fan in my doorway. I don't, but right, for airflow. We have central air, but you got to get the airflow in sometimes. So I keep a fan in my doorway. I keep the door open and the fan. So I told her, I said, shut my door, face the fan out, put it on high, and entertain your brother. So my bed's this way. So I just sat there with Lucy on my bed and just like begging her not to go, to just be okay. And she wasn't. And she passed my arms. And my daughter heard me cry. I'm not a crier. I'm not an emotional person. I mean, you probably know that by now, right? It's been a year. Oh, excuse me. I have a lot of new subs. Hi. Not an emotional person. But yeah, so we lost Lucifer on Monday. She was 4. Perfectly healthy. 4-year-old cat. Gone. And we don't know why. It's done. I'm sorry. It was really, really hard. And she passed, and I burst out crying, like the ugly cry. And my daughter heard me over the fan. And you know, I tried to compose myself the best I could, and I came out and I told my son that I let Lucy, I wrapped her up nice, like, because she was just wrapped sloppily from the hall. So I wrapped her all up, and I told him she was gone. And my son, again, this is his emotional support animal. He is 6'4" and 275 pounds. He is a big ass boy. And he cries like a baby. And his baby is gone. And it's his mother, and her, I couldn't fix it. I still can't fix it, and I'm not used to that. I fix things. That's what I do for my kids. You know, that's my life. That's been my life for 25 years. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. So we lost Lucy, our pet of 4 years. She was 4 years old on Monday. Now we have a 14-year-old Maine Coon, purebred Maine Coon, 14 years old. I don't wish ill or anything, but we thought there would be a natural order just out of nowhere. So we're in shock. And today I came to discuss Charles I and II with you, and I have notes. I have lots and lots of notes because I wanted to do this right. But I'm a little shook. I'm still shook from the cat on Monday, and I'm sorry for that, because I'm just not an emotional person, but she was pretty neat, and my son needed her. So that's going on. And we have a new monarch. We do. A King Charles III. I was very surprised when he took that name. I was. Knowing the history of King Charles and King Charles II, I really thought when Charles did ascend, I didn't know if they were going to skip for William, the rumor mill, I thought he would pick George. I did. I think it would have been the 9th, if there's another, when George will be the 9th George. No, Charles III, he stuck with it. And, you know, I even found it odd that Queen Elizabeth had even named him Charles, knowing he would be a monarch someday, because the history, and Charles isn't a bad name or anything. It's my son's middle name. It's a family name. It's a fine name. But the history with the monarchy was a little goofy, and I just thought it was funny. I thought he would, you know, one of his middle names, or perhaps a different name completely. Excuse me, I'm gonna... Apparently I drool when I tear up. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. So I have all these notes, and I keep starting the video, and I get halfway through Charles I, and then it starts to not sound right. like I took my notes wrong or sketched them down wrong, and then I want to start again. So I don't know if maybe we can do this. And again, if I did, you know, I am convinced now that I have interchanged one of the papers, and Charles I is under Charles II now, but I shouldn't do that to myself. And I thought we could discuss Charles I and Charles II, because now we have King Charles III. And they were interesting characters. They were. Charles I, he was the son of James I of England, and I believe the 6th of Scotland. He was the first united monarch. When Queen Elizabeth passed, she left her crown to him, and I believe he was already the King of the Scots. So he, Charles I, a lot of firsts with him. Now, he was not born in line initially to the throne. He was a second-born son. And not only was he second-born, he was very sickly. They didn't expect him to make it. And when his father went down to London from Scotland to get his crown, he didn't even bring Charles. They're like, no, he can just, you know, whatever. So he did take his son Henry, his eldest son, and you know, they're living in London and being king and this and that. And one day Henry gets sick, he gets a fever. And the fever takes him out. That's it. So Charles is now in line for throne under James. And they bring Charles from Scotland down to London. And Charles was very socially, I don't want to say inept, but awkward. He was very awkward, shy, aloof, and almost to a fault of snobbishness, you know? The way he was raised. And he comes down to London, and he finds out his dad is not only like super debauched, he's gay. And for some reason, that just bothered the hell out of Charles I. And I will say, I don't think the man was gay. He had to be bisexual, clearly, because he had children. And back then, you had to make the babies. So he was a bisexual, and he was a partier. He was a partier. And when that was James, so, and his son Charles just like, no, that's not right. He was just so embarrassed over his dad. Now, he adored, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. He married a French Catholic woman. This is Charles. Her name was Henrietta Maria. Henrietta Maria. Now, they saw each other for the first time and fell in mad, wild, crazy love. Like, they were in love for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Yeah, they had to separate because it was not working. It wasn't going well at all. A lot of things were happening. And Spain was still kind of poking, you know, in England. Spain had a problem with England, you know, since the Reformation, it being Protestant. That was the height of the Inquisition in Spain, you know, the 1600s. So Catholic. And they're poking at England. And, you know, Charles I, he's monarch. He says, F this. He goes, I don't want this. He goes, I'm going to war with them. So he assembles Parliament. And he says to Parliament, you know, Spain, they're being a real bunch of jerks. I want to go down there. I want to fight them. Can you give me some money? Now, they would not give him the money. And the reason they wouldn't is they wanted his gay lover, Buckingham, gone. They said, you get rid of Buckingham, we'll hook you up. And he was like, you know what, Parliament, I dissolve you. You're dissolved. Go, go, go. So he dissolves Parliament. Yep. Now, after that, now see, this is where I keep thinking I'm screwing up. I really think I am screwing up today, and I want to get through this for you, and I'm debating stopping again. I can do this. Okay. Now, Buckingham obviously didn't go. he got in Charles's ear. And he said to Charles, you know, over in France, all the Catholics, like, they're screwing them up, you know, because the Reformation was happening, becoming different religions. And he's like, we got to help the French. Let's go over there. Let's get some money. Let's get some arms, and let's take care of the French Catholics. You know, his wife was one. So they gather they gather Parliament. They know that's a no-go. They make their own army. Buckingham and Charles I managed to get an army together. And Buckingham was in charge of the army, and he leads the ships off to France. And he screws up bad. They couldn't even land in France. He misjudged the boats versus the depth of the water and where they were going to land. Everything got screwed up. So basically, they just had to turn around and run home before they got caught being there trying to save the Catholic French. You know what I mean? So yeah, again, March 1629, the third time in 4 years, he dissolved Parliament again. And believe it or not, he had 11 glorious years of reign. He and his wife got back together. Everything was working out. It was swell. And he was a Renaissance man. We're talking on the Renaissance in the 1600s now. So he was pouring money into like architecture and buildings and painting and statues and art and all this great stuff. And the public was pissed. They were pissed. They needed money, and he's dumping all this money. And he came up with this plan. This is what really freaked him out. When Henry VIII decided we're no longer going to be Catholic, we're going to be Protestant now, I don't know if you know or not, destroyed all the monasteries in England, just like gutted them, stole their shit, ruined them. And it was Charles I's idea to refix them, to repair the monasteries, the Catholic monasteries. And then that was that was not going to happen. Now, he wanted to unite Scotland and England, and he thought he would do this with something called the English Common Prayer Book. They could pray, because everybody was Protestant. He was perpetrating that he wasn't, like a soft-hearted kind of Catholic thinking guy. So, yeah, he comes out with the English Common Prayer Book, and the Scots were pissed. They were livid. I don't know why, but they were. They were so livid, they started a rebellion. They formed an army, and they were going to go rebel down in London. So Charles I pulls Parliament together. He goes, oh my God, we're being attacked. I mean, we have to go to war. I've got to protect myself. So he's told no. Again. And they're coming for him now. So Parliament made him a deal. This was a little after, they said, listen, there's this guy named John Stafford. We don't like him. You sign his death warrant and we'll hook you up. All you have to do is sign. And he goes, I don't want to do that. He goes, that's not right. He hasn't, wronged me. What? Why am I doing this? So they let it be. But there was this man on Parliament. He was kind of the head of Parliament. His name was Pym, Mr. Pym. And Pym started getting into Charles's head. He convinced him his wife and children were in danger because they were Catholic and things like that. And he said, you sign this and we're good. We'll make it good. And he didn't want to. And finally, he sat down and he signed the death warrant. But as he was signing it, he was just sobbing and saying, I have sinned against man, I've sinned against this, and this was very odd for him because he believed in divine right. He, when he spoke, it was God speaking. So yeah, he did send his queen to Holland just to protect her anyway, because he was that freaked out over Pym, because they were getting along and everything was good. So now Pym thought that Parliament should own and control all the armed forces, all the churches, all the royal children, all the laws, everything. Mr. Pym's like, you know what? Parliament got this. And Charles was like, oh, now we have a problem. So he gets an army together. And so does Pym with Parliament. So now there's a civil war. On one side is King Charles I. They were called the Cavaliers. Like the dog, the King Charles Cavalier. How cool is that? So that, and then the traitors, the other side, they were called the Ramheads. And they fought for 3 years. They, fight. And then this man, Oliver Cromwell, appears. And Oliver Cromwell gets his own army together. And his army is like mercenaries and stuff, kicking ass left, right, backwards, forwards, everywhere. And finally, they defeated the Cavaliers and captured Charles I. And he was in custody in one of his own castles. I believe it was Whitehall. I could be wrong. And for 2 years, he lived there at, in his life of luxury, but as a Protestant. Oh, excuse me. As a prisoner. And for 2 years, it was all good. And one day he's playing chess with somebody, and somebody else comes in and arrests him. And he laughs because, he speaks from God. And he's actually called an enemy of the state because of all of the blood he's spilling through his army. Oliver Cromwell's army, his army, everybody's fighting. So, Oliver Cromwell's like really doing good and calling the shots. And they're like, let's get him. So they arrested him. On New Year's Day, his trial began as an enemy of the state. And on the 27th of January, he was found guilty. So 27 days later, he was found guilty. On the 30th, now 3 days later, he famously, this is the monarch that they say he requested the extra shirt. What happened was when he knew he was going to the gallows to get his head cut off, he wore 2 shirts. And when asked why, he said, if I shiver from the cold, they'll think I'm afraid, and I don't want anybody to know, because I'm not. Like, he's like trying to play it, like he's not afraid. I never got that myself, but yes. Now, he was allowed to have a speech before they did kill him, and his speech basically was about John Stafford signing that document that his death warrant. He just never got over that out of all, the shit he created and everything like that. So he gives his speech and lays down willingly, calmly, and at his death, England became a republic because there was no more monarchy at that time. And that was, I believe, 1649. So there was no monarchy in England for quite a few years. Now, after his death, Charles II, his son, he knew Buckingham, his lover, and his armies and everything. So the fights continued. He wanted to restore the monarchy. He wanted to defeat Oliver Cromwell, be king like he should have been, and everything like that. He was raised with he was indoctrinated as well that his word was God and God was him, and so he was not having this. He thinks he's like God's word, so he is like deep-seated Catholic because his mother, Henrietta Maria, Charles I's wife, is of course his mother. So he has a very soft spot and always found comfort in like the Catholic rosary and the prayers and stuff like that. But because of power, he knew he had to perpetrate like he was a Protestant. Like this man seemed to do anything for power, where his dad lived with regret. Not Charles II so much. Now he was called the Merry Monarch. Yeah. Now, again, Catholic influence from his mother, his father's civil wars. And finally, Oliver Cromwell says, okay, that's it. He needs to go. because Oliver realized that as long as Charles II was alive, there was an heir that was going to fight for the throne. And Cromwell was well happy with the Republic. You know, he was being puritanical and making him just being a terrible person. So yeah, he was after him, and for 18 years, he went to, he lived in Paris. Remember, his mom was French, so he was in Paris for a bit. He lived with his sister in Holland. She had married a Dutchman, and she lived in Holland, and that's where he met his first love. Her name was Lucy, and he fell in love with Lucy and had his first illegitimate child with his love, Lucy. Now, this is all going on. He's trying to help his dad, you know, with his trial, and his dad won't have it because his dad thinks, you know, I'm the word of God. Nothing's going to happen. So he tried to do that, and then, you know, his dad was executed, and the next day, Parliament made Charles II a non-person, not even persona non grata, persona non, because they knew he would keep fighting for the throne, you know, whatever it is. So he's going all around, and in 1650, the Scots get a hold of him, and they say, hey, you signed this Presbyterian, I don't think covenant, and you can be our king. Easy as that. So he did have to denounce the Catholic Church to do this. Now, this man is practically a Catholic, but keeps that hidden because power. Again, so he signed Scotland's Presbyterian covenant and basically becomes their prisoner in Falkland Palace in Scotland. He realized he was like nothing but a puppet of their beliefs, their religion, what the Scots wanted. His hands were tied, even though he was the king. And on Sunday, he had to sit through 6 sermons, and this stuck out to him for whatever reason. On Sundays, there was a particular park he liked to walk in. Like, it had to be Sunday, and he was in church all day, and, you know, you did nothing on Sunday under the Puritans or Presbyterians, whatever was going on then, so, Now, after that, again, OC, Oliver Cromwell, he found out about the Scottish deal, and he's like, oh, no. He regathered his army. He's like, we got to take the Charles II. No, there will be no Charles II. We got to take this dude out. So he reassembles his army, and then there's just civil war after civil war. Now, New Year's Day, 1651, Charles II is brought to Scone Palace in Perth, Scotland, and he is, you know, christened, inaugurated, everything, King of Scotland. And that's great because it gave him an army. And with that army, he traveled south to London to claim his throne down there. And as he tried to down there, they kept engaged, you know, Oliver Cromwell was like stopping him. So they're having this one battle, and Charles is like, you know what? I'm not comfortable this time. I'm gonna stand back and just watch. He had a little telescope on a hill. So he's watching, and the Scots they were just slaughtered by Oliver Cromwell's army. They were slaughtered. So he's just like, holy shit, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? So he takes off. He's gone, and he's traveling, and he, for the most part, was in the Welsh borders down in Wales. And when Oliver Cromwell found him, by the time he found him, he had been lucky enough to have met people that were affiliated with, like, the Catholic underground, because that was still happening in Britain, of course. He was at least down in Britain, I think, at this point. And when he went to the Midlands before he was caught by when Oliver Cromwell located him in the Midlands. So he was brought to a house, and he was hid in a Tudor-era closet underneath the kitchen where they used to hide, like, priests, and, you know, they were still hiding Catholics. Now, he wasn't hid as a Catholic per se, but he was there, and he met a priest named Father Huddleston. And he and Father Huddleston got along famously. They got along great. And Huddleston gave him a bunch of material to read. And this material was just so life-altering to him. Like, it just convinced him of his rights and his power and his everything. And he says to Huddleston, he goes, I vow I vow to you, when I'm king again of England, the Catholics will be amongst the free of my people. So he was going to make like Catholicism okay again. And, you know, that was huge. Like Huddleston was like, oh my God, yay. And if the other side would have known it, that would have been it. So, you know, he's still evading Oliver Cromwell. Excuse me. And unfortunately for him, everywhere he wants to go, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Portugal, all on Oliver Cromwell's side, they're all like, nope, not you, not you. Excuse me. And then he thinks, well, Spain, I mean, Spain, the Inquisition, that was the peak of the Inquisition. It was like the bastion of Catholicism. They opted to side with Oliver Cromwell and his puritanical nutness. They did. He couldn't even go to Spain, excuse me, as a Catholic. So he ended up in France, where his mother was from. Now, when he was king in France, ever since he had met Lucy, he had a voracious sexual appetite. He was very sexy time, doing the sexy time. And it got so blown out in France that they said to him, look, you leave, we'll give you a monthly stipend. Just please go. You're too debauched for us, man. And this was France. Oh my God. So France, they send him to the lowland, or he ends up in the lowlands. Excuse me, I lost the place in my notes. Oh, the lowland. He ends up in the lowlands, and lo and behold, out of nowhere, Lucy appears with his first illegitimate child. And he's like, I'm God, that's my child. And she's like, no, he's mine. Like, where have you been, you know? So he basically, he doesn't steal the baby from Lucy, but he does get custody of that child from Lucy. And the people hated him for it. They thought it was terrible. Now, England was just plunging into chaos. It was a mess. It was lawless. It was half this, it was that. It was like anarchy. It just anything and everything was going in England. And like they were to the point, they're like, you know what? We need a monarch. We want him back. Can you please go get him, please? So in 1660, he landed in Dover, England, and headed toward London to claim, you know, his birthright. And as he paraded, because it wasn't a warpath anymore so much, because, you know, the people were desperate for him. So as he paraded down, as did happen back in medieval Renaissance times, the parade got bigger and bigger because people from the villages, anywhere, the nomads, would join him. So by the time he did get down there, he had a huge conglomerate, I guess, of people. And, you know, he was well loved. Now, unfortunately, his first thing he had to sign with the bishops and parliament was that the Protestant church would be the Church of England, betraying Father Huddleston's promise of the Catholic shall be. Oh, no, no. If you were Catholic, you were right back, like, in trouble. You were. And now he had a Portuguese bride. He did, and her name was Kathy. Just some notes. And she did not like the court he kept. With the sexy time, he had dozens and dozens of illegitimate children. Not a one with Kathy, not a one. For whatever reason, they were unable to have children together. So he named his brother James to be his heir. They couldn't make one of their own. Now, you know my notes are gonna fall because I'm on my last one. Now, again, he would hold court. He was extremely debauched. He had an appetite for naughty, you know, and that was his thing. And the people weren't too happy after that, and the plague came to town. And when the plague came to town, he and the court got out of town. They beat feet. They were gone. And 100,000 of his subjects died. And, you know, back then, I don't even think the population of Great Britain was 1 million people yet. 100,000 people died of the plague while he was in, I believe it was Oxfordshire, partying with his court. Now, because he screwed up so bad there, when the Great Fire of 1666 happened, you know, he rolled up his sleeves and he got in there and he was buckets of water and he's putting out the fire and he's working. And it's good, it's all good. And then he decides he is going to start poking the Dutch, poking Holland a little bit. You remember Spain was poking him? Well, now he's poking the Dutch. And they go, oh, okay, you're going to fuck with us? All right. So one night, their navy, a Dutch navy ship, comes into England. Now, it wasn't the Thames, but it was another river. It was in England. This gentleman from the Dutch army managed to find the English navy. He burned 4 of the ships. He got a strap or whatever, hooked it up to the flagship, and towed the English flagship back to Holland with him. That was like a major FU. It really was. And it was crisis after crisis for this guy after the fire. The ship's stealing right out of the yard and all that shit. The only good thing he had going on at this point was the theater. And who did he meet at the theater? Nell Gwyn, the orange girl. He was obsessed with Nell, like obsessed with her. He really, yeah. Now he was still pissed at the Anglicans. That he had to dissolve Parliament. You know, they forced him to the anti-Catholic sentiment and all that. So he was like talking, he wasn't texting certainly, he was on the line or whatever, with Louis XIV in France. And Louis XIV said, listen, I got you. I'll help you fight the Dutch. You know, F your Parliament, you got to keep dissolving. I got you. But when we win, Charles II, you have to free the Catholics and you have to declare yourself to be Catholic when we win. And he takes the bet, takes it again because power. Now, what happened was the Dutch army and the French army were just at a stalemate. They could not get it together. So he assembled Parliament. And now Parliament wanted something else from him this time. They did. They wanted him to disavow Catholics, you know, make Catholicism, all of it illegal. And he had to say that his brother James was not the next in line to the throne because he was a Catholic. So they're like, disown your heir, tell the Catholics no, we'll hook you up. For the first and last probably time, finally, he took a stand, Charles II, and he said, no, my brother, James, is the next monarch under me, and otherwise, I'll dissolve you again. So that was that. And he, believing in divine right, you know, and he won. He got it. His brother James stayed as the next heir. And on his deathbed, when he was dying in 1685, they snuck in Father Huddleston, that he was in the closet with, remember? Yeah, that gave him the reading material, that gave him the drive and all that. Well, they snuck him in when he was dying. He's on his deathbed. And, you know, they're treating him in the Protestant Anglican way. And Father Huddleston comes in and he gives him his first and last Catholic Holy Communion. And the last hours of Charles II's life were spent holding a crucifix. And for whatever reason, he found such comfort in that. And I do believe that's from his mother, because I know we all regress when we're, you know what I mean? So he died with a crucifix in his hand. And that was Charles II. And that was 1685. So how many years ago? But yes, I mean, these are Charles's predecessors. I believe they were the Stuarts, and yes, he is a descendant of theirs, and just a little fascinating to me. So I thought I would hop on and explain a little bit about Charles I and Charles II, because now we have King Charles III. I'm really not used to it. I'm not. I don't think I will be. And just my heart really is with everybody that just mourning the Queen. What a piece of history. Like, very sad, very sad. And for us, like, we that didn't have parents or family, it's very easy to get stuck on somebody like Queen Elizabeth because she was always there. She was always doing the right thing. She was always working. She was, you know what I mean? She was a good person, a decent person. And look at the last 48 hours of her life. I mean, she insisted on meeting Liz Truss, the new prime minister. She wasn't able to do that, you know, till her last moment. She was at work. And I am just so sorry for your loss and our loss, because it was very easy to attach to Queen Elizabeth, it seems, perhaps. I know I am. And I guess we have King Charles now, and that's the story behind it. As far as the cat, don't know what we're gonna do. And if you're still here, that's freaking awesome. I can't believe, if you're still here, give me a comment. You want to emote? Give me your favorite emote. Give me the 5th emote in your phone. When you click that, hit number 5 and let me see what you got there. If you want, you don't have to. That's it. So I hope you take care. I hope you're doing a lot better than we did this week. Not good. And I will talk to you soon, okay? Everybody take care. Stay well. Please take care of each other. Okay? And we'll talk soon. Bye.